Your micro brain on climate.
Hello, I'm Dave, and for the first time in 2026, let me welcome you to this micro episode of Your Brain on Climate, the show about human brains versus the climate crisis. A very happy new year to you. A new year is, of course, a fresh slate, a chance for you to atone for all your weakness and your vice that you've demonstrated in the last year, and to be a new you. Maybe you've already drawn up some resolutions for 2026, like exercise more, drink less, take up a new hobby, be nice to your significant other. You may already be sticking to it, or you may, given that we are by now several hours into 2026, have flushed them down the toilet already. Changing stuff. Particularly a cute thing to think about at this time of year, but something very human, I think, wanting to change stuff. Small stuff like our personal habits, big stuff like buying a new house, and even bigger stuff like how the world works and whether we're nosing up the planet that we live on. And also, change is hard, and there's something equally human about trying to change stuff and failing, about trying to change stuff but feeling this kind of dead hand of accustomed habit on our shoulders, of succumbing to that extra slice of cake when we tell ourselves we're not allowed it anymore, but, cake is nice. And I think this tension goes right to the heart of what it is to be human, maybe what it is to be alive. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, as you know, or indeed any sort of ologist, but I've talked to enough ologists and brainy people to come away with what's turning into a bit of a cod theory, right? So I think being alive is about balancing two impulses at the sort of basic organism level. On the one hand, you want to stay safe, and on the other hand, you want to seek out new things. It's true for a mollusk that needs to keep out of the way of a mollusk eating fish, if fish eat mollusks, but also that mollusk needs to find new sources of food as well. And it's true for you. That's right, I just called you a mollusk. You also want things to change and for things to be new, but you also want things to stay the same. One of my first episodes of Your Brain on Climate got right into this tension. How it can hold us back personally, but also, if hacked, our desire to change can spur us on to better things. And how that works at the level of a whole society. How, societies seem simultaneously slow to change, but also things changing really, really quick. And the reasons for hope that you can find if you look back and see how many big changes we have made, some of them really quite quickly, and how big, scary new ideas can actually come to seem normal in no time at all. So I chatted then back in 2021 to my mate Andrew Sims. Andrew is a prolific campaigner, author, thinker about the economy, about human nature, and about how change happens and how to get more of it quickly. Around his kitchen table, with the spectre of COVID lockdowns still in the air, we got to talking about humans and whether it really is true that the more things change, the more we want them to stay the same, and vice versa.
It's a very real paradox in the human condition, and it's a paradox that some very powerful forces, those tabloid newspapers, are very attuned to, about people can hold very contradictory positions simultaneously. We can want the familiarity of recognizable circumstances, the comfort of being in our own habits, in very familiar surroundings, whilst at the same time still yearning for newness and difference and novelty.
Crikey. Seems like this is what all tragedies are about, isn't it? This is the human condition, right? This is what always happens. You look at any great Shakespearean tragedy or anything like that, apart from the ones where people have, sex with their mother or whatever. But you look at any of these great narratives, and they're often about someone who couldn't help themselves but mess up their own situation because they were driven by something. Be that cheating on their wife or going on some ill-advised adventure or whatever.
The stage is certainly set for a potential tragedy, but it could equally be a comedy or a wild adventure. And I think the interesting thing is that within that, people are incredibly malleable and changeable. we're incredibly influenced by what the social norms around us are. And if you look across the range of different cultural circumstances in modern societies, it's not like we're all the same. There are some societies which are far more tolerant than others, some societies which are much more cooperative, some societies where they see the value in paying their taxes more than others. The fact that what I'm interested in is what sets those norms, because I think we are incredibly adaptable. Another one of the contradictions, that we love things being as they are, and yet we are also incredibly quick to adapt when we have to. One of the hard things is getting over the bump of change. The prospect of change is almost always worse than the reality, certainly if we're trying to kind of improve circumstances. So there's a deep conservatism in us in the way that we resist change, but when it happens, we're incredibly quick to adapt to it. You can see some of that in the willingness, the sort of extended sense of responsibility that, in spite of some transgressions, has been the norm during the pandemic experience. Our willingness to change our patterns of behavior, how we travel, the wearing of face masks, looking out for the health and well-being of friends and family. We've accepted what would have formerly been almost unimaginable upheaval in our day-to-day life for the common good in the name of public health. And there's other ways in which, in moments, we see the speed with which we can adapt and change. When the financial crisis kicked in 2007 and 2008, here we were in the United Kingdom, with the City of London. We're sitting in London at the moment, and the City of London, which is sort of like the great temple of the modern capitalist order, and overnight great swathes of it were effectively nationalised because circumstances demanded it, and people stepped in line and saw the necessity. And it just goes to show, I think, that the greatest paradox, perhaps, is that all we have to do is turn around and look behind us to see how change is constant. So I think one of the things about trying to imagine how we might surf or negotiate this very malleable human nature that could set the scene for disaster or adventure is to begin sort of planting in the imagination and reminding people of the possibilities of the positive changes that we are capable of, reminding ourselves of our agency, reminding ourselves of when things have changed in the past, which seemed difficult, troublesome, and were pushed back against then, and now seem second nature. I mean, take a simple one like smoking in public buildings and public places. Nobody wants to go back to those kind of smoke-filled rooms anymore. People have still got the opportunity to smoke if they want to. But that was a thing which was kind of strongly resisted. And now is really hard to imagine getting back on a train and it being a carriage being full of smoke.
Your micro brain on climate.
Thank you hugely for listening to this micro episode. If you like that snippet, go back to episode 4, listen to the whole shebang with Andrew. There's a link in the show notes. It's a really interesting chat. And if you haven't made your New Year's resolution yet, and you're now resolved to, how about you resolve to thank this humble indie podcaster with a review on your podcast medium of choice? It makes a massive difference to the algorithms. It also is a massive fillip to my soul. And if you're feeling particularly resolved to support this one-man operation with your love and even your dosh, you can chip in a couple of quid over at patreon.com/yourbrainonclimate. Go on. You know you want to. I'll be back soon with a new full-length episode. Until then, I hope your new year starts exactly how you want it to and continues like that as well. But remember, if it does all go down the Swanee, there is nothing as constant as change, and every day is a chance to start again. All right, goodbye.